Welcome to Lecture 2, where we will get a closer look of self-esteem and its relationship with ego. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty of self-esteem, I want to remind you that this is a judgment-free zone, and because you're here, you're determined to learn more about yourself, and I want to commend you for taking the steps to enrich your life and others. So thank you for being here. Let's begin. So, what's self-esteem? As the dictionary states, self-esteem is one's confidence in one's self-worth and self-respect. So please pause for a moment and digest this definition. What's your confidence in your self-worth and your self-respect? I would just give you a moment to think about this. No matter where your confidence level sits, it's important to know that building self-concepts is a process, and the process is not to be rushed. Our self-concept is cultivated throughout lived experiences, our environment, and our most intrinsic personality. As Rome was not built in one day, we should not expect our personality to change in a blink of an eye. So, as our lived experiences shape the way we see our world, our sense of worth and respect for ourselves is unbalanced over a prolonged period of time, and we develop either excessive or low self-esteem. So from now on, we will call either of them, so excessive or low self-esteem, they're in the spectrum of unhealthy self-esteem. So a lot of people might ask, where does self-esteem operate from? What does that really mean? How does that affect our life? So self-esteem operates from the way we see ourselves and react to any situation in relation to the way we see ourselves. I know that's a mouthful, so I want to read this again for you. Self-esteem operates from the way we see ourselves and the way we operate, so how we react to anything in any situation in relation to the way we see ourselves. So for example, when we have a lower self-esteem and when we didn't get the promotion, because we already felt and think that we know that we're not enough, the way we operate is to accept or to be, oh, I knew that I wasn't gonna get it anyway, or I just need to try harder, or things like that. You operate from this level because that's the way we see ourselves. And a lot of people would think that this is normal because that's just the way the world works. But let's just stay here for right now, and we're gonna move on, and we can discover more why there is other way of seeing things and to support our self-esteem. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, we learned about that normally the two limited spectrums of our self-concept to which we operate from are inferior, so which means that I'm scared all the time, or superior, which I am a Superman. I am very confident. I can tackle the world no matter what people think, and overconfidence. And the way cognitive behavior therapy supports our well-being is to bring our concept to the middle, as you can see in the chart of the slide, right in the middle with the red circle. So our sense of self creates our self-esteem, and our sense of self is heavily related to our ego. Before we delve into the details of ego, though, it is sufficient to know that to alter the way we see ourselves and elevate our self-esteem, as indicated in the chart here, we must achieve the balance between the inferior and superior self-concept. So bring ourselves to the middle, as well as the between the highlighted egoic mind. So bring our ego into balance right in the middle, as you can see in this chart. So to sum up, in order to elevate our self-esteem, we must balance our self-concept. If it's one thing you want to take away from this slide and in this session, it's that we must find balance of our self-concept, the way we see ourselves, as well as our egoic mind. So the ego needs to be in check right in the middle. And so throughout this course, we will slowly unveil how we can do just that. So fear not if you still don't really quite understand. But the more we go through this lesson, through different courses that I'm going to go through in the next few session, you will get to know a little bit more. What does a balanced self-concept and what does a balanced ego look like? So then we will talk about ego. So ego is the architect of self-perception. What is ego? Ego derives from self-identification. From birth, we learn to identify with people, such as our parents, with things, toys, and how they make us feel. Physical feeling. Like the toy makes me feel good. My parents make me feel sad or angry, not enough, or however, they boost our confidence level. To put that plainly, ego is the sense of identity, as we mentioned. So as we learn to identify with these physical beings and feelings and needs, we develop and grow, and we learn to identify an object, in this case ourselves, with a subjective mind, such as I am a good parent, I am a rebellious child, I need this toy because it makes me feel safe, or as we grow up, I need this car or this great promotion or job in order to make me feel secure. So according to the proclaimed spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle, I know a lot of you must have heard of him. He wrote The Power of Now, which changed my life, by the way, that he says, ego means self-identification with thinking, to be trapped in thought, which means to have a mental image of me based on the thought and emotion. Let's read this again. Ego means self-identification with thinking, to be trapped in thought, which means to have a mental image of me based on thought and emotions. So ego is there in the absence of a witnessing presence. So, which is the image, like witnessing presence, meaning that's an image of me, thinking of me, instead of like the way that you, from the outside coming in, from the universe coming in, having a subjective mind to see yourself. You're just being objectified because we are witnessing it, just from ourselves, with this image of ourselves. So note the keyword trapped. Ego is not good or bad. It is when we are trapped in the thoughts that motivate our ego, we start to affect our self-esteem. So we're trapped in this obsessive thinking of ourselves by our ego that creates these thoughts like, I need this in order to feel safe. And we're just trapped in this cycle. And that's what affects our self-esteem. Excessive survival emotions tip the scale of a healthy ego. And an unhealthy ego leads to unhealthy self-esteem. So this is here. There you go. So a unhealthy ego, so an unbalanced ego, leads to unhealthy self-esteem. We'll talk a little more about survival emotion in a little bit because that really does greatly affect our self-esteem. But let's first break down how ego hinders our path to healthy self-esteem. So the breakdown is that sometimes we will add value or disvalue in our experiences, right? Like my presentation was not selected. My idea, which means my idea is not good enough, which means that maybe I'm going to lose my job. And you kind of just going down into this rabbit hole of thinking and the value and disvalue of that particular experience. We misplace having something as being human. So things versus self. I have a new car, I am happy. So are you unhappy because you don't have a new car? Is that really the way life works? Or we add illusion to self into our experiences. So I'm always right and I will show others that I'm right. So the intention of being always right. I always attract jerks. Like this is my whole relationship. I always attract jerks and that's just who I am. That's just my experience for the rest of my life. And we add that illusion of myself of like I always attract jerks into my life, which is so not true because we can change. So just to go going a little bit deeper with the last slide. So when we add the value, so when the added values are negative, we gradually forming some unhealthy sense of self. So either passive or aggressive. When we are satisfied by materials, we identify with things. Hence, we are slowly lose connection to ourselves because we identify with the house, the car, the job, and everything. But then we forgot to ask ourselves, how do we really feel? Are the things making me feel better? Or am I making myself feel better? And when the added value is of fact or positive, we have a sense of pride and we are more joyful, or we just can see a different point of view. So as you can see, when we disvalue our sense of self, we let the egoic mind take over our thinking. Then we are trapped in the image of false sense of identity. Why are they false? Because these images are not facts. In fact, that image of me always attracting jerks, right? They're not fact. These are just your experiences. So in fact, you added some special ingredient in them to fulfill your hungry ego. That illusion, it's the ingredient to fulfill the ego that's really hungry to grasp on these values of your life. As Eckhart Tolle say, as you are trapped in these images, all you can do is to survive. So we are trapped in our survival emotions. When you're trapped into these images of that me not being enough and always attracting jerks, all we can do is to survive the next relationship, to see how we can get past this jerk person, right? So we're just trapped in those survival emotion of thinking that I'm scared about the relationship that's coming up, or I'm not enough to have a fulfilled relationship. And these are the image that you're trapped into. So earlier we discussed how unhealthy ego can lead to excessive survival emotions, which in turn can contribute to unhealthy self-esteem. So what are survival emotions? Survival emotions are derived from feelings that we are in danger, right? We need to survive, like out in the wild fighting the bear, and we need to survive. And they evolve over time to protect us mentally, physically, and environmentally. And these emotions can be like lack, fear, unworthiness. So unworthiness, like we're feeling like a small prey bound to be eaten. So unworthiness to live in this world, right? Like we just cramped there. Anger, guilt, shame. Take a moment to read back these words: fear, lack, unworthy, anger. How do they make you feel? As much as we do not like these feelings, we are addicted to them. And that is a fact. Because we're prone to go to what's easy and safe to get to in an instant, which being fearful and being overwhelmed has been our instinct for a very long time, since maybe we as a child, or just in this crazy overwhelming world, we have been feeling that for most of our life for a long time. And it's based on our identification to ourselves as well, based on the world we're living in. So it's easier to get to that space, to that fear mindset or that lack mindset, rather than something different that you can try. Something, for example, is joy, gratitude, courage, invincible, because we don't really feel that in the world that we're living in right now. So that's where we go whenever we face conflicts and challenges and disappointments, which are these places of lack and unworthiness. We put these values into our experiences where they're just experiences or facts, but we put a label on them because that's how we see them. That's how we subjectively see them, and as a result, how we see ourselves. I hope that you get this part, and I will just read back again. Because we put these values and labels into our experiences, but in fact, they're just experiences or facts. When we put on those labels, it's because that's the way we see ourselves for a very long time. So we then operate from that point of view, from the label. So this is almost like a circle. So a lot of people feel like, oh, how can we change? There's no way. That's the only way to live. So just pause here and we will talk more about this, how to break the circle. All these experiences, so any experiences that you go through in life exist in our life. When we let go of ego, so the identification, take over how we think and react, especially with superior or inferior thinking, which is derived from our sense of self, it takes over our life. We're stuck in a circle of survival thinking and feeling, and we will not be free to change our lives. And this is so, so, so important to remember. In order to change our life, in order to break the cycle of, never get the right job, or never was in the right relationship, or, having a destructive relationship with our family and things like that, we would never be able to break through if we kept being cramped in this survival emotion and thinking, and we will not be free to change and create the life that we want to live. So to have a healthy life, we have to have a healthy self-esteem and to get our ego in check. Now you know that the basic of self-esteem and how unhealthy self-esteem was cultivated. We will move on to the science of self-esteem so you can identify these behaviors in your day-to-day life. And from there, we can tackle these beliefs one by one. In other words, to elevate our self-esteem, we must uproot our perception and long-time limited beliefs in ourselves. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you in the next one where we talk about the signs of unhealthy self-esteem, and we can move on with our lives.